Welcome to ArtTalk. I'm Laura Womack. Deanna Bocher is our program producer, and with me online is our technical director, Jen McHugh.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're staying warm and dry.
Tonight we have a special guest, Anne Corso, the executive director and CEO of the Michener Art Museum. Anne is in her second year at the helm of the Michener, our treasured regional arts organization. We'll talk about her vision for the Michener's future and how she plans to meet the challenging future as the economics of arts organizations has altered dramatically with federal changes in funding. Prior to coming to the Michener, Anne served 5 years as executive director of the Southern Vermont's Arts Center. During her tenure, membership and annual fund donations doubled, education programs grew fivefold, and millions of dollars of capital improvements were invested in renovating galleries, improving infrastructure. She even launched a restaurant at the Art Center's historic mansion. Prior to Vermont, Anne was director of education at the Chrysler Museum in Norfolk, Virginia. She held leadership positions at the Reading Public Museum and the Delaware Art Museum. Anne earned a BA in art history from Rosemont College and an MA in museum education from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. Not least, Anne is herself an artist. Welcome to Art Talk, Anne Corso.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Laura. And I am so happy to be a part of the series. So thank you for having me.
And viewers, thank you for joining us for this special night. Join the conversation with Anne. Put your questions in the Q&A. We will get to them. And now let's go right to a slideshow that Anne has put together for us with Jen. And we're going to see Anne's inspirations.
I'm so glad I don't have to run the slideshow. Many thanks to Jen and team for doing this. So
Absolutely.
Now, Laura, should I just tell, or Jen, should I tell you when to advance? Because the intro slide is just eye candy, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, we're going to go to the inspiration here.
So, having a museum career is a kind of long and winding road, so to speak. And, Laura, you and I, prior to this talk, we were talking informally about, how I came to this field and this crazy life. And I mentioned to you that, as a little girl, I was raised by a single mother, and my mom used to take me on the train into Philadelphia to the Philadelphia Art Museum on the free day on Sundays, because that was the day that we could afford to go. And it sounds silly, perhaps, to our viewers, but I knew as a little girl that I wanted to work at an art museum. It was just the place that I wanted to be. And so, through my time in school and studying, art history in college, before I started moving into leadership positions, one of my very first jobs in the arts is I worked in a gallery that no longer exists, but I imagine that some folks who are watching know it, a gallery in Center City that represented the artwork of the Pennsylvania Impressionists. And so I was, a young, fresh out of college student who was working at a family owned gallery, not being family, but nonetheless hanging, displaying, on a good day, selling the artwork of these iconic artists in our area: Daniel Garber, Fern Coppage, John Follansbee. And, I was taking them to people's homes and law offices. And I fell in love with this genre, this period of art. And as you all know, it is one of the cornerstones of the Michener experience and our DNA, not only here at the Michener, but in this beautiful region of Bucks County. And so, many years later, many more decades than I care to admit, um, it comes back in a way that is just so special to me. So, it's in my blood, I think.
Well, and tell us about these particular images and why you chose them.
Just sort of a smattering of representation. So on the left, a beautiful image of John Follansbee, and that was one of the kind of signatures at the gallery that I probably shouldn't name, so I'll hold back. And whose style just ranged from traditional impressionist to this moody, dark inspiration. Now, of course, I don't have images of every single work that was in the gallery, and I didn't particularly think it was that relevant. Um, the middle painting, this Lambertville Afternoon by Daniel Garber, is a very recent acquisition here at the Michener, and I think it just went up. I'm looking at Jen, but I know she can't answer me. It's very funny to have my staff member who is here with me. But I think it just went up this week, this Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And so a beautiful new acquisition. And one of the things that if we have time and can talk about is this idea that a permanent collection at any museum is not really permanent. It's always evolving, it's always growing. And of course, on the right, as so many people likely know, one of just the most extraordinary images by Fern Coppage. And personally, I have always loved the women artists, the artist who struggled so much more, particularly in the early days of the 20th century in the art world, and overcame many, many challenges. Coppage, I think, is perhaps one of my favorites of the era, and as people will probably see behind me, I even have one or two of them in the office, so they're near and dear to me. And like I said, it comes back, and just a few years ago, when the position came up at the Michener, this is what brought me back. This is what brought me back home from Vermont.
Well, you mentioned the collection's always evolving, and I was, saving this for a little deeper into the conversation, but we might as well dive in.
Why
You
not?
know, how, the Pennsylvania Impressionists are so beloved that I think in the arts organizations locally, there's a sort of a tension between honoring that past, which is so significant, and if you could just talk briefly about why it's significant, and then also being, modern, relevant, forward looking. As the head of an arts organization, how do you balance that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Laura, it's a great question, and I think there are a couple of ways to think about it. The Bucks County is so rooted in not just the Pennsylvania Impressionists, but um, the writers, the musicians that were here. James Michener himself, it's so much a part of our history, and our museum was founded by a group of community philanthropists and collectors. And so that really sort of formed the kernel of our permanent collection. And other collections came along. We acquired work along the way over our now 37 years. The Lenfest, the iconic collection of Jerry and Marguerite Lenfest, of course, came sort of midway through our history, but made an incredible addition to our collection. And so for me, thinking about the collection is absolutely it's one of the most important things that we have. It's one of the aspects that defines us. But it's certainly not the only one. And so, the artistic tradition didn't stop with this group. It's continued. It's continued with our contemporary painters. It's continued with, my goodness, some of the people that you have interviewed right on this show. Um, and what I often think is that we, in our collection, while it is focused, I don't want to say narrow, it isn't narrow at all, but it's focused on the region of the Delaware River Valley with a heavy emphasis on Bucks County. We can also, I think, balance that with broader offerings of American art. And that to me is really exciting to be able to um, celebrate our local and regional tradition and bring nationally known artists to our local and regional community.
So how do you and your curatorial staff, Laura Igo, Joshua Lassard, Abby Lua,
Uh-huh.
how do you, and I hope I didn't forget anyone there, how do you all make a decision about when to bring in, somebody a little farther afield?
It's a great question. It's a balance. It's a work in progress. I mean, there's not, I'd like to say there is this scientific formula and there's a rubric and there are some guiding factors. You know, we have criteria. We think about the arc of exhibitions that we have done in the past. We think about exhibitions of artists that connect to artists in our collection. We think about artists that are important in our region, but who are not part of our collection, or who, in some cases, celebrate the tradition, say, of contemporary craft, like Judith Schechter, as you're looking at here, but not necessarily represented in our collection or our exhibition history. And we have three rotating gallery spaces. We change them out each twice a year. That's 6 shows a year. So we think first about the content, the artist, the art that is potentially traveling. Then we think about the audiences. What audiences are we serving? Who are we not serving? Where do we want to focus? Are there visitors we're missing? Are there stories we're not telling? And then sometimes opportunities just come. Absolutely, opportunities come to us through traveling exhibitions, through an offer of a particular lending institution, a collector, that someone's, a partner museum is traveling something important. So we balance all those. The senior staff talks, digs deep, thinks about the pros and cons of these exhibitions. Does it fit the time frame? Can we have it for long enough? Can we manage the security requirements, the climate requirements? And then there's always the good old discussion of can we afford it?
Right. So is it more expensive to bring a traveling exhibit in or put something up locally or?
It depends. Not always. I mean, often, a traveling exhibition, an exhibition that comes from a traveling service or from another museum, there's often a fee that's associated with that. But no matter what the museum does, you are paying for professional art handling, shipping, insurance. There are just costs that go with any exhibition. We as a museum have to do our due diligence and keep the art safe and in a healthy environment for the art and promote it and program it appropriately. And every exhibition, every artwork has slightly different requirements and slightly different cost ramifications. So it's part of what we do. It's part of the business of being an art museum.
All right. Well, let's go back to you, Anne. You're coming back home. You
Coming
expected to
back
be an
in.
artist, or work in a museum. I guess that's a different thing.
it's so funny that you say that because, as a youngster, when I used to visit the art museum, I would think, gosh, I want to work in an art museum and paint the pictures and hang them on the wall. Um, as everyone knows, that's not at all how it works. But I still have a love of process. Unlike you, I am not an artist. I dabble. I lean far more towards craft than fine art. I'm a terrible painter. I find nothing more terrifying than a blank canvas, but give me glass or metal or clay or tools or fire. And I know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with a paintbrush and a blank canvas. So here what you're seeing is my one of my small little jewelry projects that I wore for you tonight. And me in process working on stained glass that I have been a student of and quasi taught. I mean, I'm not a master by any stretch, but I can teach people who know less than I do. And it's reverberated throughout my life and career. And it doesn't necessarily drive the exhibitions at the institutions at which I work, but it certainly has an impact on me and my thinking and the places that I have immersed myself in.
So I believe you learned this craft at the Delaware Art Museum, where you worked early in your career. Is that right?
Um, for the silversmithing, yes, that's absolutely right. The stained glass, I had done a little bit in college at some of the art centers that I have worked in, the Wayne Art Center, again, the Delaware Art Museum, and as we have the image here, I'll explain just a little bit about this. I took a position at the Delaware Art Museum after working in a smaller sort of regional art center that was more process based, more class based. And after getting my graduate degree, after getting my degree in museum education, this was my very first true museum job. And so, what I was so fortunate to be a part of was the major renovation at Delaware Art Museum, um, where the entire building was renovated, the galleries were renovated, restaurants, and the parts that I was fortunate enough to lead was the renovation of the studio wing, in which you see the two slides here, the clay studio, the metalsmithing studio, and of course, traditional painting 2D studio, and a children's studio. And then on the left, an image of our family learning and our children's gallery, which for me, coming from a background in museum education and really being able to create a space where parents, grandparents, caregivers, and children could feel comfortable, could be in a place where they weren't told no, where they weren't told don't touch, and where, our youngest museum goers could start to feel like they belonged. And again, that's something that's kind of a thread, so to speak, that has run through my life and career. And it's a place that, again, is still near and dear to my heart. They do great things. They do great things down there. Um, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, Laura.
Well, well, I was just going to say, I'm actually, and then Jen, if we could go forward, my apologies to getting fired up, and then the Wonder Studio, because Anne, you've said before that you consider yourself an educator, an arts
Yeah.
educator, which is very different from what your job is, but I know you have deep roots in that.
And I do. And so if you don't mind, Laura, I'll ask Jen to go back to the two slides of the glass collection.
Sure.
And so, one of the transformational moments in my life and career was when I was offered the opportunity to um, take the helm as the director of education at the Chrysler Museum of Art in Norfolk. And so, in that position, I was coming on just before a major renovation of the museum, and it had just launched its glass studio. But what you're looking at here is one of the signature aspects of the Chrysler's collection, which was based on Walter Chrysler Jr.'s, that the son of the automotive founder, was based on his collection. And he was a mercurial collector, collected Renaissance paintings, Picasso's French Impressionist, and traded one for the other throughout his life. But the one thread that was constant in his collecting was that of glass. And so what you see here is sort of a sampling of the encyclopedic collection of glass at the Chrysler Museum of Art, a Roman vessel. And think about this, people were making glass thousands of years ago, the same way they do it today. I mean, minus the electricity, but everything else, melting glass to thousands of degrees, picking it up on a hollow blowpipe, putting their human breath into it and inflating it and shaping it. For me, that's just so magical and special. And the collection, of course, ran the gamut from ancient Egyptian and Roman blown glass up through contemporary glass artists like the American artist and who lives abroad in Europe, Karen Lamont, who creates these massive life-size cast glass figures that refer back to ancient Greco-Roman times in their beautiful figurative and draped forms. So, and Jen, if I can have you sort of flip to the next slide, which is get fired up. Part of the reason that the Chrysler Museum renovated the building next door and turned it into a hot glass studio for the public was to illustrate the very, very basic question: how is this stuff made? Glass is complicated. It's a complicated process. And yet it's fascinating. People love to watch it, they love to learn it. And so one of my charges as the director of education was also supervising the glass studio. And not being a glass artist per se, and certainly not being a hot glass artist, it was a wonderful experience and really, solidified my love of the medium. And Jen, if I can have you perhaps click one more time, we'll go to one of my signature projects, and I think viewers are starting to hear a couple of recurring themes here. But one of the things that we learned at the Chrysler, one of the things that we experienced there was that we had a it was a very sort of community, even though it was in a large city, a semi-large city. There were families there. There were school kids there. There were people who wanted to be a part of the museum, and we did a really wonderful job of engaging children and families in our programs, in our glass studio classes. And yet that experience sort of ended past the lobby of the museum, and parents, as you all can imagine, were absolutely terrified to take their young ones through the museum, and particularly to take them through a museum that had a significant collection of glass, contemporary glass, and really breakable objects. And so what we did there, and what I was so fortunate to lead there was taking a gallery and renovating it and creating, um, I still believe, one of the best interactive gallery experiences for children. And so, what you see here is the Wonder Studio. That is still very active today, though, things move around and change a little bit. But what you see on the left is a group of our young museum goers who are literally painting with their bodies, with their movement, with that motion through a series of, I won't even pretend to try to explain the technological pieces, but basically a projection program that uses color to follow movement. And really kind of emphasizing that idea of the body as a paintbrush, or your human movement as a paintbrush. And then on the right, what we sort of we played with this idea that, kids want to see art, they deserve to see real art, but parents deserve to feel safe and comfortable. And so what you see here is our art aquarium. We built uh, basically a hollow box with a microclimate inside, in which we put original art objects, original collection objects, but scaled them all the way down to the floor so that kids could see them, so they could lean on the glass, not hurt anything, and even walk inside the art aquarium to get that 360 view. Um, and one of the most gratifying things for me was seeing this project come to life. And then it changed the dynamic of the museum and its audience.
Uh, that there's so much there, Anne. We have a question from
Yeah.
the audience, and we encourage you all to share your questions for Anne. You're so very open to sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate that. Jen, I'm going to switch it up and say, can you take that question?
Of course. And so Anonymous wanted to know,
Okay.
that is the question. Did one need to instruct the parents not to tell their young ones not to touch? Which is very timely
that
with the Eric Carle exhibit.
oh my gosh. Oh, Anonymous, if you only knew what we were going through over here, but we'll talk about that in a minute. um yes, I mean, the short answer is yes, of course. That is, one of the things that we as educators, our front desk staff, talked about with visitors by the second, and really honing the craft of gently guiding visitors on how to look and how to experience without coming across as being threatening, being overly guarding in galleries, and explaining why touching the art can be harmful. And so, yes, that was a part of our everyday existence. But the flip side of that is that you get used to telling people no, don't touch this, even in the nicest way possible. Don't touch this, don't touch that, be careful here, be careful there. And so while I wholeheartedly believe that children and families should have experiences in the museum galleries proper, looking at the art, talking about the art, having fun in it, parents also need a place to decompress where they just don't have to worry, where they can sit down for a moment without telling, their little ones not to do this and not to do that. And so what we found with this space is it was just a wonderful respite for parents and families. And it didn't stop them from going into the rest of the museum. It was often a reward, or it was a break, or it was a way to teach them expectations of what was to come in the rest of their visit or in future visits? It's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
So that's where I was going to go next is, funding is changing on the national level. These look like expensive projects. The Michener has some terrific educational programs for kids and for adults.
Yeah.
Can you give us a preview of what you might be planning for us here? What can we look forward? We want some of that.
We want to do some of that. So, you know, what what I will say, and Laura, you kind of alluded to, the national funding and in art museums and other arts organizations, we've been hit hard in recent years. I mean, it has been for some institutions and ours in particular, a slower than we'd like recovery from COVID. Um, Coupled with loss of at least federal funding, and that has ripple effects. It impacts your state funding. An uncertain economic climate gives at least donor caution, member caution. And um, so we the museum and we the Michener and we the museum field need to think about how we make ourselves financially sustainable. And so some of that is through fundraising. National grants are wonderful when you get them, but you can't rely on them. And for us, one of the things that has been my charge and my charge to the team and the board's charge to all of us is how to think about making our institution financially sustainable. How do we live through our mission every day and still earn and raise the funds to make meaningful experiences? And so, one of the things that we have been doing is ramping up our education programs. The learning and engagement team has done an incredible job of increasing programming. And with that comes increased earned revenue. With that comes increased membership. I mean, it used to be, once upon a time, we had tours and art classes. Now there are signature lectures, there are concerts, there's yoga and mindfulness in the gallery. There is just a wide range of programs. There's not a day other than a Monday that goes on that we don't have a program here at the Michener. And so for us, that's really building our base. That's telling people that we're here. That's meeting them where they are in their interest and skill level. And equally importantly, solidifying that.
We have a freeze. Well, when Anne comes back, I'm sure we'll have the end of that. And I know also that she's the person to do it. One of our next slides, Jen, if you could bring up the Northern Attitude, Southern Vermont's Arts Center, that Anne has been, it's an old arts organization that Anne worked to, do we say, renovate, spruce up, and instituted a lot of programs that really changed the profile there at Southern Vermont Arts Center. So let's see, Anne has fallen off. We appreciate all of your patience in the audience. We all want to hear from Anne. I'm sure she's going to be right back in. And this just gives us a chance to test Jen's outstanding technical skills as she edits this later for the online. Hi, Anne. Welcome back. These things happen.
So, of those facility needs, reliable internet.
Right. Um, oh, there we go again. Let's see if she's still here. I hate for all of you to, we're going to keep talking for a little bit because we're going to give Anne a chance to come back. I'm sure she will. And I know you're all as excited as we are to talk with her about it. When this goes online, we will edit it. Thanks to Jen. Actually, I did want to say what I was going to say when Anne froze is that Jen, you
Before,
are sorry.
I think she's trying to come through, but
Okay,
she went, oh,
here we
oh,
there
go.
she is.
okay,
We're going to go a third time's a charm.
go to
We
third
were just
time. Sorry about
vamping,
that,
Anne.
folks.
What you were talking about the programming, and
Yeah.
I did want to point out, as I'm sure you do as well, that our friend here, Jen McHugh, is she does adult programs, which I've taken advantage of, and we're really excited about that too. I think this is a good opportunity to segue into what you did at Southern Vermont Arts Center, because I think what you did there was so impressive and will give us all the confidence that you're the person to do it. We know you can do it because you've done it. Face these challenges.
Yeah, I think so. I've done it. So the Southern Vermont Arts Center was an organization a lot like the Mill. It was founded by artists. It was an artist colony, housed in, a historic mansion turned galleries, and over the years expanded into a four-building, 100-acre art center. But when I took the helm there, it had been through a huge amount of transition. A longtime director had left, 10 directors in 10 years, loss of community confidence and programming, there's just that whole spiral effect. And so when I arrived at SVAC, I'll use the acronym, I instinctively thought that we didn't have really a finance issue. We had a community issue, and we needed the community to care about us again. So as I had the ability to kind of reassemble a team, and that just for the most part happened naturally and with attrition, we opened year round. We had been open for 5 months out of the year because, winter looks like this in Vermont. Um, Started offering year-round programming, started, going to the street fairs in our local town, doing outreach into schools. We invited our fellow nonprofits into the art center to co-program with us, whether that was the Academy of Lifelong Learning, or that was the local music festival, the equine festival, that the equine rescue, which allowed us to do drawing and painting classes on the equine farms. And we just really started over my, little over 5 years there, started touching every aspect of the community with both adult programs, kids programs, and partnerships. And so we became again sort of the cornerstone of the arts in the region. Um, to the extent that, as you mentioned in the intro, our fundraising doubled. We quadrupled, or perhaps even a little more than that, created, classes in our year-round programming. We brought in exhibitions of nationally known artists in addition to showcasing our artist members, which is kind of a lot like Phillips Mills model. And then building, renovating the institution, creating capital enhancements, building a restaurant. We're
And
all
we have
part
a
of the things that we got to do there. So two of my favorite events here. On the left, you see a project that was one of our major exhibitions, the Red Dress, which came from an artist based in the UK, but had women sewers, embroiderers, fiber artists from many marginalized countries, women who had survived abuse, war, refugee camps creating the artwork of this dress, a really powerful, powerful piece. And our little visitor here who is looking at it just instinctively knows it, feels that she's in the presence of magic. And then on the right, one of our signature programs at SVAC was Halloween on the Hill. And in our little town of 4,000 people, we brought almost 1,000 people up the hill, as we called it, because we were literally on top of a little mountain there. A community-wide Halloween day. And of course, those, if anyone who is watching knows me, knows already that I'm not afraid to ham it up, and I'm there in costume leading the kids' Halloween parade at the Art Center. But again, showing that, you can be both an institution that shows incredibly powerful, meaningful art from across the nation or even around the world, and also engaging your community in just fun, lighthearted programming and bringing people together.
That's true. No, I'm going to pause. No, I'm that's terrific. And so you've got plans for us here. Um, that's where we were talking about your plans for the Michener when we went into our pause. There we go. Art for all ages.
Art for all ages. So, we talked a little bit about, the heart of the collection, and I think you and the viewers know how important that is, both to me, to the Michener team, to our leadership, to our community. But we also realize that there's room to expand our audience, and that popular appeal isn't a bad thing. And so, what you see on the left is our recently opened exhibition, Small Living Things, the Magical Art of Eric Carle, which is an exhibition that um, came to us from and with whom we partnered, the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art up in Amherst, Massachusetts. And the exhibition is one of the original illustrations of Eric Carle's beloved children's books. And those of you who are listening, you know these books: The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Very Grouchy Ladybug, Brown Bear, Brown Bear. It goes on and on. And so one of the things that we talked about as a team, over the course of the past year and a half is, how do we engage families beyond the programming that we do, beyond our second Sundays, beyond our story readings, beyond our wonderful studio-based classes? How do we extend that experience into our galleries? And so this is, I think, our first truly family-friendly exhibition in about 15 years. We have had overwhelming response to it. We had 1,300 people in our opening weekend, and I think the exhibition has just exceeded all of our expectations and taught us some things, quite frankly. And then, of course, on the right, and I see a question popping up, but just as a teaser, most folks will recognize the iconic image of Grace Kelly by Andy Warhol. And so this time next year, we are hoping, we are working, I have not quite signed on the dotted line, but are working on an exhibition of Andy Warhol's screen prints from the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh.
How fabulous is that? That is so exciting. I'm assuming that it's pretty close, or you wouldn't be talking about it publicly, but that's wonderful.
Next year.
Next year.
Next year.
Fabulous. So we do have a question from the audience, and we love that. Please keep them coming.
Okay.
Jen will help us with that.
Um, yes, Scott wanted to
Okay.
know, how did the Eric Carle exhibition come about? It is a wonderful exhibit. I agree, Scott. It has been so
Okay. Thank
fun.
you. Thank you, Scott. Okay. Well, full disclosure. Um, at my time at the Chrysler, we worked as when I was director of education there. We put on an exhibition in partnership um, with the Eric Carle Museum, and it was a beautiful exhibition. Again, it did a lot for building our audience, building our membership, and reaching out into our community. Um, and so they were great partners. They're really great. It's a great institution to work with. And so I tossed the idea out at one of our senior leadership um, meetings, and the team liked it. We ran with it, and the stars just aligned. They had the right show at the right time, and it is here in our galleries through Memorial Day weekend.
So how are these shows fitting the mission, Delaware Valley artists? How do they fit in?
I take that, Laura, I take that a little more broadly. And I think, while our collection is narrow in its focus geographically, I think in our exhibition program, most of our exhibitions last 3 to 5 months. And I think we can bring our community a wider array of artwork from across the nation. Um, there are connections. We are named for the literary tradition. Now James Michener was not writing the same kind of books that Eric Carle was, but I still feel that there is a lot of connection between the written word and the illustrated word and the art of books and literacy. Andy Warhol is, Pennsylvania native and iconic in the art world, and it gives us um, many opportunities to connect back to some of our traditions in both of those cases. Certainly thinking about the idea of pop art, thinking about it was before my time, but many of you see the Grace Kelly image and remember the exhibition that we put on. Oh, Jenna helped me out a decade or so ago. And then with the Eric Carle exhibition, we took the opportunity to pair our own collection of creatures and small living things and depictions of animals. So, it's an opportunity to experiment and play and have fun. And I think bring our community many, many exhibitions and artworks that they don't have to travel to Philadelphia or New York to see. And so I think that's the beauty of the collection and the exhibitions program is that they can serve sometimes complementary um, paths, and sometimes they can be quite different. And, our audience is diverse and varied, and I think they like both.
So
They'll
do you
tell
get
me.
any
They'll write in the chat.
and does your audience like it? Do you get good, I mean, obviously the Eric Carle show is a hit. Do you get good feedback? I mean, this is something that Phillips Mill, our host organization on this program, you know, deals with quite regularly with a 25-mile radius for the art show, the juried art show, but an international radius for photography. And that's a discussion that at Phillips Mill, we have a lot. I don't know about our broader community.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's not a scientific answer to this. And what might be the answer today might be different 10 years from now. Might have been different 10 years ago. But for the moment, what I hear people, and those of you who are online watching, like, please chime in. But what I'm hearing is, thank you for bringing these wonderful exhibitions to us, like Judith Schechter, like Anila Aga, like Eric Carle, and also, thank you for making our beloved Pennsylvania Impressionist and studio craft artists still relevant. We're continuing to collect those artists. We are adding new works to the collection yearly. We are creating unique programming and scholarship around those artists, which hopefully we can just flip to one or two of those slides to illustrate that. And again, I think that's the beauty of a community institution, a regional institution, is this ability to do both,
Yeah, sounds
to
good.
to honor your legacy and look to the future. I really don't think they're mutually exclusive.
If I may add also, Anne, I think that, we're a community of artists as well as art appreciators, and it's great to
Right.
have the cross-pollination, bringing, new visions into the area that are inspiring so broadly. If I can just add that, we
Thank
we
you.
do have more questions, so let's
Okay.
get to that, and then we're going to get to those slides. And we'll
Okay.
go a little bit longer since we had a delay. We'll just take a few
I am
extra
so
minutes.
sorry about that.
Okay. Hi, Joab. Gonna answer your or ask your question. He is asking specifically about art and education. How is the Michener planning to enhance Bucks County High School students' appreciation of art?
Jen, I should have you answer that. Um,
Well, I can.
it's a great question. I will start it off and I will kick it to my expert here. I am quite grateful to have Jen both in front and behind the scenes. We it is interesting right now. We have our tour program is booked through the Eric Carle exhibition. Every single day that we're opened, we opened on an extra day. The majority of those students are K through 5. A handful are middle schoolers and a few specialized art classes, but it skews young for this exhibition, and that's no surprise. Now, in future exhibitions, and of course with our permanent collection, we hit so many of the curriculum ties, not only in fine art, but Pennsylvania history, um, in national history. And so one of the exhibition that is coming up is celebrating the semi-quincentennial, the America 250 effort. And so an exhibition that centers on our particular place in the region and the particular connection to Washington crossing the Delaware and our proximity to that historic moment. An exhibition that we are curating ourselves will open at the end of June and run through the second half of 2026, and a great opportunity for many of those middle and high school students to connect with that curriculum. And Jen, this is your everyday life. I know you can sort of answer on the museum's behalf on this one.
I can say that just today we had a middle school group of life skill students. So these are neurodivergent students came and they went through the Eric Carle, and then they went and they had an art door, which is an art making opportunity. And I overheard one of them leaving the exhibit, and the docent, Dale, who's absolutely amazing, said, "Okay, now we're going to go make art." And one of them goes, "Yay, art!" So, and then on the flip side, my colleague Andrea and I were working with physicians assistants, students from Del Val on using art to develop their close looking skills and developing subjective versus objective analysis. And this will all be used for their future as a PA when they interview patients when they meet with patients, take down data, trying to be aware of their preconceived notions, their experiences. But other than those two specifically that happened today, I will remind you, we're always doing the local high schools and middle schools are always bringing in classes. It's so wonderful because Lenape and West are so close. They can walk in. They will come in for writing using the art. They will come in for looking at specific exhibits. So I feel very confident. Plus, we have such a community with our classes, and those students come back time and time again, and then they come in their CITs in the summer, and then there are interns. So yeah, there's definitely a direct connection with the high school and middle school students.
Well, that's terrific. A lot going on at the Michener. Let's take another question quickly, and then let's get to those the last few slides.
Okay.
We'll fit this in.
But Benjamin asked, how many exhibits or special exhibits do you plan or hope to conduct, say, in a year? You mentioned the time frame for the current exhibit. Is that a normal length of time for an exhibit?
Benjamin, great question. This is actually a short run. The Eric Carle exhibition is a short run because that is the requirement of the museum. And because they are works on paper, Eric Carle created hand painted, he hand painted his own tissue paper and made collage from that. So it's his artwork, believe it or not, the original artwork is very sensitive to light and conditions. So we were only allowed to have it for this short run. What is more typical is a 5-month run. And so we have, for all of you who have been to the museum, you can probably picture we have a large changing space, a sort of medium space, and what we call sort of our small jewel-like exhibition. And so we stagger those so that we're doing 2 in each gallery space every year, and never having more than 1 exhibition space in transition at a time. In addition to that, we rotate works from the permanent collection throughout the year as loans come in, as loans come out, as we acquire new exhibitions. So there are always things moving and changing, but sort of 6 a year is the average, with kind of a 5-month
And I gather you have an Elizabeth Price exhibit coming up.
run. So and I think, as we were talking earlier, one of the things that I think about in terms of the exhibition program is, how do we bring the world to Bucks County and Bucks County to the world, right? And so what our team is working on, what our curatorial team is working on, is an original exhibition of the work of Mary Elizabeth Price. And so that is conceived by us. And for those of you who are watching who maybe think you don't know Elizabeth Price, I promise you do. You have seen these in the community. One of our beloved Pennsylvania Impressionist painters who uniquely not only painted the landscapes of Bucks County and abroad, but whose signature style is this wonderful sort of floral still life painting, and this incredible technique of gold and silver leaf foiled backdrops, which is kind of iconic in her body of work. And the exhibition will take place in our large changing gallery. We'll also have an accompanying catalog. Our team is working on the scholarship for that. Works will come from our own collection, from collections in the community, and institutions throughout the region.
Oh, terrific. And then we've got one final slide to share with you all before we call it.
One final slide, and again, thinking about some of the depth and breadth of artists in the Bucks County region. Many of you, and certainly those of you at Phillips Mill who are connected to the mill, know the work of sculptor of artist Thelma Burke. And recently, the middle slide there shows the exhibition um, that we hosted this time last year of the late great collector Lewis Tanner Moore. And Selma's sort of stone guardian figure is there on kind of that right side, that piece in the pedestal. And in our sculpture garden, another one of Selma's relief pieces is I shouldn't have cropped so much of the stone wall, but you get the idea there. So we again are working on an original exhibition. We are partnering with Spelman College down in Atlanta that holds a number of her work and a number of her works in archives. It is in the early stages. The curatorial team is going off to Atlanta next week to begin work on it. And the exhibition is slated for 2028. So it gives you a sense of how long some of these, how long it takes when an institution is creating and curating an exhibition from scratch. So we are very excited for the partnership with Spelman and to tell the story of one of the great women artists who I think is perhaps not a household name outside of Bucks County.
So many fabulous things coming our way, and we're really looking forward to seeing what you and your team, Jen and Laura and Joshua and Abby and all the others have in store for us. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your vision and the future at the Michener.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. As you all can see, we could have talked more, but it gives you sort of a sense of some of the things that are happening, some of the things that we're thinking about, and please come visit us.
Thank you all for joining us tonight in the audience. We appreciate your patience. Next month, we hope you'll come back. We have our good friend Gene Underwood. He will be joining us on March 25th, and we'll talk about his 21st century still lifes. You can go to phillipsmill.com to register. Jen McHugh is our outstanding technical director. And Deanna Bocher is our outstanding program producer. I'm Laura Womack. Good night.